Welcome to Vicarious Insights, a podcast where we dive into the world of disabilities, learning from experts, providers, participants, and their families. I'm your host, Jace. Today we have a special guest with us, Lillian, who is a published author and professional parenting strategist. Her purpose is to guide parents to happier and healthier relationships with their children. Lillian is here to share her personal story and discuss the Nurtured Heart approach, a methodology that has made significant impact on many families. Lillian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jace, awesome to be here. Thank you.
No problems. We're thrilled to have you, Lillian. So let's start with a bit about you. Can you share your journey and what led you to work in this field?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, I'm a parent of two now adult sons in their 30s. I'm a prior, or I suppose I'll always be a teacher. I'm a teacher. I haven't been in a traditional classroom for many, many years, not since my youngest son was about 5. So 25 years or so since I've been in a classroom. I'm a parenting strategist because of our family's journey. So my eldest son was a regular, well-behaved, good kid, didn't get in trouble at school, was easygoing at home, just a regular kid, just a good regular kid. His younger brother comes along 7.5 years later. And let's just say the contrast was quite extreme. So he came along with a bang. He literally came into this world with a bang. When he was a baby, if he wasn't breastfeeding or sleeping, he was screaming. He was a very challenging baby, which placed a lot of stress in our home and on our family. And by the time he was a toddler, a 2 or 3 year old, and I know they talk about the terrible twos, but he was extremely challenging. We lived in a large country town back then in Victoria, and there were 5 childcare centres. So when I decided to go back to teaching, my son was about 3.5, and he just didn't cope. They didn't cope. He didn't cope. He was extremely challenging. He was defiant. He was oppositional. He was hyperactive. He could have displayed acts of aggression as well, which was really, really challenging, considering my husband and I are passive people. Even in our relationship of 35 years or so, we've never even had a yelling match or an argument, like a big argument. We live in a very, calm home. But this little boy came into this world with a real agenda, and he was here to teach us some really good lessons. And at 3.5 years old, in his second last childcare centre, so 4 out of 5, at 4, he was diagnosed by a childhood psychologist with initially childhood depression, which I thought was quite interesting, because if anybody was depressed, it was his mother. I was the one who wasn't coping. He was then diagnosed with ADHD and ODD, and most people know of ADHD, that's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, was new to me at that time. Even though I was a teacher, I hadn't really heard much about that. So with that diagnosis, we were then like, well, what do we do with that? What do we do now? So everybody from doctor to pediatrician to various psychologists, counsellors, psychiatrists, every single one of them wanted to medicate him. That was their solution. And for us, and I'm not judging anybody else, but for us and for our family, that was not a path we wanted to take. Yeah. So because we chose not to medicate, it then became quite an interesting journey of discovery, self-discovery, and discovering a lot of things, about our son and about our family situation. So it was a really, really, really interesting journey in those early years.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet that at that age, being diagnosed with childhood depression, and yeah, I can see I can understand why you would not want to medicate him. That would be on the way I would think as well. I speak to a lot of parents with the clients that I train, and I get to understand that if they can see a few more things that are available or learn from somebody else's history as well, can be beneficial. So can you tell us some pivotal moments in your journey?
Well, there have been many, Jace, and it's a long story because our son is now in his 30s. So I have two sons, as I said. So my younger son is now in his early 30s. And our journey really did begin with birth. But I think that there are two parts to our story, really. So there's the earlier days where we were focusing more on his health, like his what I call his physiology, his physical body and his well-being. Because after being diagnosed at age 4 with childhood depression, ADHD and ODD, we just weren't prepared to take on what those practitioners shared with us. That wasn't a path we wanted to take. So we really had to start a real journey of exploration. So we started that journey out from that time, and we really focus more on the physical stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people are aware of how important diet is, food and toxins and our environment and all sorts of things, pertaining to the child's body. But what we actually came to realize is, especially over time, and especially as he came into his adolescence, so 12, 13 and 14 and beyond, we came to realize that a lot of the things that we had put a lot of effort into when he was younger, it wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't the whole puzzle. Because if you think about, for example, if you're making a cake, you've got to have all the right ingredients in the cake, or it's either not going to taste very nice or it's going to flop. And we had a very amazing piece of that puzzle that was missing, which we didn't necessarily identify until it all went south again. So that part of the puzzle was our connection and our relationship, and how we were actually parenting and responding and relationshiping with our son. And what I've found with a lot of, the work that I do with parents over the years, and I have literally spoken to thousands of people over 25 years, either in big seminars or, workshops or courses or one-on-ones, many thousands of people I've spoken to. And I've come to realize that with our children, and this is just any children we have, they kind of fall into a couple of categories in the way that they are driven, I guess. So, and just like us big people, we're the same, but a lot of us are more relationship driven. And with kids, and particularly I find the kids who tend to be diagnosed, who might be considered, on the ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, or have had some sort of diagnosis, or are even kids who are more intense and challenging. So they may not have had a diagnosis, they may not need a diagnosis, but they just seem to be more demanding, more intense and challenging to both teachers and parents. They tend to be more relationship driven. So they tend to really do everything to get that relationship. And often what they'll do is they'll muck up to get that relationship. They'll misbehave, they'll do the wrong thing, because our kids tend to be either more relationship driven, or which we call heart driven, or head driven, which means that they'll do more for approval. So for a teacher, for example, the kids who are more approval driven will be the ones who put up their hands, answer the questions, are compliant and cooperative, because they're really wanting approval. But the kids who really want the relationship, and in my experience of talking to thousands of parents over the years, the kids who want the relationship more than the approval tend to be the kids who are the ones who would be considered more intense or challenging, or maybe even the diagnosed kids, the kids who end up with a diagnosis, because they are doing everything they can possibly to seek and get that connection and relationship. And unfortunately, Jace, even with the very best of us parents, and I believe I was a really good parent, and I know if you're listening in, it means you are a good parent, because you're wanting to learn more about parenting and you're wanting to help your child and wanting to help your family. But what we don't understand, and what I didn't understand, and what all of the people I've coached haven't understood, is that we do a lot of what we call upside down parenting. So we give a lot more attention and connection and relationship to things going wrong, instead of what we can see moving forward and going, right, qualities the kids have got, greatness they're showing. And Jason, that is like it's now so obvious to me when I think back to our son when he was at his really challenging time. So if you're listening in and you've got a challenging and intense child, I'll share our story a little bit and I'm sure it'll make you feel a bit better. So our son, when he was in primary school, we kind of coped through those years. It wasn't perfect, but we were doing a lot of stuff with him around, his food and his diet and all that sort of stuff. And, working on a bunch of stuff and seeing a bunch of people. And we were kind of going, I guess, okay. Things were going along okay. But then when adolescence hit, so age, 13, 14, 15, it got really, really tricky. His sense of needing and wanting that relationship, both at school and at home, really escalated. And because both the teachers and us as parents didn't get what he was seeking and needing from us, he just mucked up more and more because you know what? And it's really sad to think this, both as a parent and a teacher's from a teacher's perspective, is that the kids who muck up most in the classroom are doing so because that's what we're giving more energy and attention to. So with our son, and my biggest parenting teaching moment was when my son was 15. So he had already been to 5 childcare centres, to 4 or 5 different schools, and he's now in what would become his last year at school at age 15. And this particular moment, and I share this story with listeners because I think it's such an important story and it really tears at my heartstrings, but I know that by telling and sharing this story, it's going to help a lot of people because we were trying our best as parents. We were doing everything we knew what to do with our, as parents and as people, and we were doing our very, very best, just like I know, you are if you're listening in today. But we were missing what I now see as a really huge, big part of the puzzle. And this became evident for us in this incident that I probably have so much regret and remorse over. And if you are a parent of an intense and challenging child, you'll possibly relate. So our son, when he was age 15, we got yet another phone call from the school. We got many of them, right? We got so many of these calls from the school. And this particular time, the school rings, it's mid-afternoon, so it's after lunchtime, but it's not yet home time. They called us to say our son had mucked up at lunchtime, such and so had happened. It was serious. He's going to be suspended for 20 days. And he was constantly being suspended, by the way. For 20 days, I'm like, wow, that's pretty major. What's happened? Well, you'll need to come in to discuss, but we're really just calling you to let you know he's taken off. He's not at school. And I'm like, okay, like I was waiting for him to get home. And as you can imagine, if you're a parent, I was just getting redder and red, like I was getting madder and madder and madder. Look, how could he do this again? Like, it's embarrassing to get all these phone calls from the school. Anyway, he gets home from school at a reasonable time, actually. Maybe hoping that the school hadn't called me. But instead, and this is where my heartstrings are just so pulled, because instead of me being his biggest supporter and fan in this moment, I did what we now call so much upside down parenting. As soon as he walked in the door, instead of saying, hey, love, how was your day? I got a phone call from the school. I believe, you had some challenges today. Tell me about it. Tell me your side of the story. I went straight into, what did you do? Why did you do it? How can you do this? I'm over these phone calls. It's like, can't you get it right? Can't you just behave? And the poor kid, who's obviously already copped a lot at school, gets home hoping that the person who should have been his biggest supporter and fan, his mum, didn't even give him a second to express himself or to explain anything. So he must have been so frustrated in that moment. He said, bleep, 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 use your imagination, some nice language, I'm out of here. So it's quite a long story, but I'll cut to the chase with it a little bit. So 4 or 5 hours later, my husband's driving around looking for him. He hadn't come home. We were worried about him. He wasn't answering his phone. And I thought he was just blowing off steam, but he must have been so, I can't even think how he must have been feeling. So like, nobody gets me. I can't get it right at school. I'm not getting it right at home. Nobody understands me. I'm a bad kid. I can't get it right because I'm constantly being told that, right?
Yeah.
And in that 5 hours, Jace, he consumed who knows what. But when my husband found him, he was in a drunken stupor in the gutter. He didn't know who he was, where he was. He had consumed and taken a whole bunch of stuff. And and he must have just been feeling so bad about himself. And it's not to blame myself as a parent or for parents to feel bad, if our kids go and do stuff like this. But when I think about his sense of self in that moment, must have been so bad that when he did eventually come home, it took him almost 2 hours to sober up. Not 2 hours, 2 days, sorry. Literally 2 days. He was on a mattress in the lounge room so we could watch him. And in that time, we coached with our parenting coach. So I don't even know if I've told this part of the story, but we had a parenting coach we just got in the States who was really helping us to see how important the way we communicate in relationship with our son is, because the words we use, he said, can be weapons or they can be powerful influences for positive. So they can tear somebody down or they can build somebody up. And we were using our words a lot to tear our son down. And I'm sure he was getting that at school as well. So he's getting it from everywhere. So what hope has the poor kid got to feel good about himself? So anyway, in this interim, while he's in this drunken stupor, we got some advice from our parenting coach that really started to change the trajectory of our family and our life. And, he basically said, be his biggest supporter and fan. There's nothing to gain from going over what he did, why he did it, what he took, what the consequences of that are. Just be there to love and support him and be his biggest supporter and fan, which was difficult for me because I wanted to go into that, upside down way. Like, why did, like I had all these questions, but I had to really, reset myself a lot back to just allowing, him to just get through the situation and us to be there to support him. So that was a huge part of our journey, Jason. When you say pivotal, like that was truly a pivotal point, because from then on, we really got how important our words are and how we respond to things happening in our kids' lives. And one more little story, and then I'll let you ask another question, because while it's in my head, from that healing journey, so I think you mentioned I'm an author. I've written 6 books. So my 3rd book, The Revolting Child, A Blessing in Disguise, I wrote after this incident and after we did some coaching with our parenting coach, and we kind of got through a really difficult situation. Say it might have been 9 or 10 months beyond that incident with the school and the drunken stupor. And so I've wrote my book in 6 weeks. I literally it poured out of me. It's not a little book either. It's like 300 odd page or 220 pages. And it tells our story from my pregnancy and his birth right through until he was just short of 16.
You did that in 6 weeks?
6 weeks, yeah.
6 weeks. Wow. Okay.
I was just on a mission, right? And the interesting thing is I had to get everybody's permission to write it, because it's a real tell-all story. I had to get my husband's permission, my eldest son's permission, my youngest son's permission. It's very, it's like airing the dirty laundry, and I was just totally transparent. I just said it like it was. But a lot of people have just loved reading this story because they're like, oh, it's just so relatable. But anyway, in this book launch, and the reason I'm telling these couple of stories is because, like, I could just start teaching you stuff, but by telling you these stories and having parents listen to these stories, they're going to be like, okay, Now I know, like, there are other people who are feeling what I'm feeling. There are other people who have gone through what I'm going through, and they got through it. So I'll share with you what we did to get through it later, but I'll just quickly tell this story at the book launch. So my husband and I it was about 250 people at the book launch, and we told our story. We were then having a Q&A. And we'd been asked a heap of questions, and one man put his hand up and said, "Can I ask your son a question?" And I kind of looked across, at the back of the room, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so." Like, he wasn't 100% keen. But he stood up, and the man said, "So we've just heard your mum and dad's story of where things were at just 10 months ago, and we now see where things are at now." And the dad said, "My question to you," and this is to our son, "is what was it that took you from where you were just that short 9-10 months ago to where things are now?" And my ears were literally like, what a great question. Like, I hadn't even thought to ask that myself.
Yeah.
And my son, I could see his mind ticking over for a couple of minutes. And what he said was really profound. And I love it. He said, "When I saw the effort that my mum and dad went to be the best parents they could be, I just wanted to be the best son."
Mm.
And
It's like a hit you right there one, isn't it? Yeah.
it's like, that's why I do this work. That's why I help parents to navigate that, because when their kids see them making the effort, and even if they muck up and even if they make mistakes, but their kids see them making an effort to be a better version of themselves, a better parent, a better mum, a better dad, then they just want to be better. So that's why, and when I learned the nurtured heart approach, which we'll get onto, that's why this work is so important.
Can I go back? I've just been playing around in my head when you were talking earlier that you've got the two types, the ones that are going for approval and the ones that are going for
More relationship. Yeah.
Did, and this is probably tangent worthy, I don't know. Do you like, how am I trying to say what I'm trying to say? So is there times when a child might be on the approval side and then circumstances happen and they actually flip over and become
Yeah,
on the other side? So it's not like you are
absolutely.
this or
Yeah.
you are that.
No, it's not like you are a heart kid or a head kid. We're all a combination of both.
Yeah,
But some kids will go to more effort to get the connection and relationship than they will approval. Like, these are the kids who we would perceive and call the misbehaving kids, because they don't care about the approval so much. They just want that connection and relationship. And they're the kids who will muck up, do the wrong thing, break the rules, not listen in class, not follow the rules at home, not do what they're meant to do, because they're seeking that connection and relationship. But unfortunately, because we don't know what we don't know, we
yeah,
are giving it to them at the wrong time. We're giving it to them when they are mucking up and breaking rules and not, being the way they should be, instead of helping them to see that they can have as much connection and relationship as they want if we give it to them in a right side way up. And you're probably wondering what all that means, but I'll get to that.
okay. So I'm saying, so that is just I have a habit of like jumping 3 steps ahead.
I do too. It's all good. And you can listen to 10 of my interviews and they'll all be different, because I keep, I jump around, and tell different parts of the story, what I feel needs to be said in the moment, because there's so much, like, it's a long journey, obviously, that I've had.
So that's the, like, I'm being not consciously, but I'm being naughty because I know when I'm naughty, mum has to spend time with me, so I'm getting time with mum.
And that's the thing, that was a huge learning for me, because, and if parents, if we think about it, think about your last 24, 48 hours. When have you connected more with your kids? More often than not, especially if they're a kid who's a little bit more intense, we've given more of us. Now, in the nurtured heart approach, we call it, we're their favorite toy. So let's just say the kids are playing nicely, your mum's cooking dinner, the kids are playing nicely, watching a video or playing a game or just reading or whatever they're doing. They're quiet, they're just doing their thing. Mum's in the kitchen cooking, and everything's going well. So in this moment, the kids are not getting any connection or relationship because mum's like, phew, they're quiet. I'll just get on with cooking dinner. But as soon as there's some ruckus or some noise or some fighting or some yelling, or you can hear something being thrown, straight away mum's in the kitchen, into the lounge room or wherever they are, even if she's in the middle of cooking dinner. And the kids get to learn, when I muck up, that's when mum or dad or teacher or whoever comes to life. And when I'm being good, I don't get so much of that connection and relationship. Now, we might get a little bit of good job, well done, which we call junk food praise, but they don't get that real nourishing, juicy connection and relationship. And for some kids, you know, that doesn't matter as much. But for these kids who really crave that connection and relationship, they get to learn the way I get more out of, you know, more connection and relationship is when I muck up. And then it becomes a thing, right? And my son, you know, we've had conversations since he's been an adult, and he said, well, that's exactly how it was, because he was wanting that, and that's the only way he learned to get it. And then he decided if he was going to get that when he was being bad or mucking up, he said, I might as well be good at it. So he was good at mucking up and being bad. And that's when he got more attention and connection and relationship. But when he was doing the right thing, it's almost like he was invisible. Nobody noticed him when he was at school. Like, I don't care how challenging a kid might be, in inverted commas, they cannot be challenging 24/7 or, you know, however many hours they're up in the day. There have to be moments of greatness. There have to be moments of them showing great qualities and following the rules and doing the right thing. Even the most challenging kid is not so clever to be that challenging all the time, but we're not looking out for those moments. So that's, and I might jump into the nurtured heart approach because I'm kind of starting to explain it. Is that okay?
Yeah, go.
So,
That's going to be my next question. So yes, go.
yeah, great, because we learnt all this stuff from our parenting coach, but not in such a structured way. So when I learned about the nurtured heart approach, and that was only 11 years ago, I fell in love with it because it was so in alignment with what I knew to be truth and what we'd already learnt from our parenting coach, Frank. But he didn't teach us kind of a system. It was more like we did, I don't know, over 2 years, probably hundreds of hours of coaching with him. I remember it cost a lot of money. So the nurtured heart approach is based on 3 stands. So what happens, Jace, when you stand for something? You're really strong and you're like, I really stand for that. It means you're strong and you're resolute.
Yeah.
So the 3 stands in the nurtured heart are absolutely no, absolutely yes, and absolutely clear. So absolutely no is I will not give attention, connection, relationship, and energy to things going wrong. So if you think about it, I'll use my watering can as an analogy. So I've got this watering can that I use. You know, what are you watering and giving energy to? So if you're anybody who deals with kids listening in, imagine this is a scenario. Imagine you've got some plants outside that you want to water. So you fill your watering can with nice water, some plant nutrients, and you go outside. None of us are on purpose going to go outside and put that beautiful nutrient-rich water straight on the weeds.
Yeah.
Why? Because we don't want the weeds to grow. What do we want to grow? The flowers, the plants, the herbs, the veggie patch.
Yeah.
But in our relationships, a lot of us are watering the things we don't want to grow, the disrespect, the not listening, the not being cooperative, the not following the rules. And that's when we give all of the juicy connection, i.e. the water, to the relationship. So stand 1 is to make a really big effort to not give your connection and relationship to things going wrong. Now, that's not always easy because instinctively, generationally, that's what we do. We give more of ourselves, more connection, more attention, more relationship to things going wrong. And that's not just in parenting, by the way, that's in life in general. Stand 2 is absolutely yes. So this is the part I love. I will absolutely, yes, I'm going to give you attention and connection and relationship and recognition for things going right, or steps towards things going right. So for a very intense and challenging child who might have in the prior moments been disrespectful, okay, I'll give you an example. So Jason, you've just been angry with me. you've yelled at me, you've been disrespectful, you've called me names, and you've just not been a good kid, right? And so I haven't given that attention or connection or relationship, but now you're not yelling or screaming or calling me names. So Jace, I know you were upset with mum when I said no, when you couldn't do that thing, and you got really upset and you said some things that you know that weren't nice. But here you are now, you're looking at me, you're calming yourself down, and I can see you being really respectful in this moment. You're using a lot of great self-control, because I know you probably still want to be arguing and, you know, and getting your way, but you're not. You're showing me some great self-control in this moment. You're really being respectful. Now, they might not be totally being respectful or showing great self-control, but they're taking steps towards that. So what we want to do is we want to have the kid feel like they're being respectful, because when we're telling them they're being respectful and they've got great self-control, they're more likely to do that. And then the more opportunities we find to show them that they're a respectful kid, that they're using great self-control, that they're kind, that they're thoughtful, that they follow instructions, the more we tell them that, the more they'll want to be that. And also that's when they're getting the connection and relationship from us. So instead of how we typically would do it, you've just mucked up. Now, Jace, that wasn't very respectful. It wasn't nice how you spoke to me like that. You really need to show me more respect. So in the moment when you're being disrespectful, it's not really the time to teach respect. The time to teach the respect is when you're showing signs of being respectful, or you just outright are being respectful. So stand 2 is where we learn the new language, and there's way too much for me to share on this short time, but it's about teaching different recognition ways of teaching language and recognition techniques to teach parents how to embrace the greatness that they see in their kids, how to acknowledge the qualities that the kids are showing in the moment, so that the kids will feel a sense of, I am a respectful person. I am a cooperative kid. I do use great self-control, instead of, I'm always disrespectful, I'm always getting in trouble, I can't get it right. We have this thing in the Nurtured Heart approach that we call building a portfolio of greatness, or we call it inner wealth. So building inner wealth. You work with kids, and I don't know if you work with, do you work with teenage kids?
So the youngest I'm working with at the moment is 10, and I go right up from there.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, because a lot of
thinking
kids,
about everything you're saying, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
this is what I should be
I
doing.
know.
Yeah.
I'm giving you a lot. I'm giving you a lot. It's a lot to process, I know. But a lot of kids, particularly 14, 15, 16 and beyond, have, not all kids, but a lot of kids have a sense of self that is, I'm not good enough. I can't get it right. Nobody understands me. I'm always getting in trouble. Or, they don't feel the connection that they really desire from the people who mean the most to them. And these kids build a portfolio of all of this, I'm not good enough, so that when they are a little bit older and they go out into the world and get their own relationships and have jobs and stuff, their sense of self, their self-respect, their self-love, their self-esteem, their self-worth isn't where we would hope it would be, because they've been told often, not with intent, but they've been told often by teachers, by parents, by other adults of influence, that they're not good enough, because we keep telling them, and giving that attention and connection and relationship at the times when they're mucking up, instead of finding all the opportunities to tell them that we see their greatness. My goal is to help parents to build inner wealth in their children and in themselves. Another whole topic about building our own inner wealth as adults. So I'll quickly go to stand 3, because I could talk about stand 2 forever. Stand 3.
Can I quickly
Yeah.
ask you this?
Go for it.
So picturing a kid that's just had a crappy day at school, where clearly he's been told a lot of that sort of stuff, and coming out dealing with all of that. And potentially you're the next person that's going to see them, and you could be either adding to that or helping to heal him, helping to bring him back. What would be What would be your best advice in that situation? Kids got into the car after school. He's had the crappy day. How's the best way to help him out? Thinking about people with autism and stuff like that. A lot of them come home and they can finally unload all of that crap.
Absolutely. Huge, 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 and awesome, excellent question. When we were picking our son up from childcare, remember, he went to 5 childcare centres over 2 years, got kicked out of them all because of his behaviour. When we went to pick him up, the educators, the carers, not intentionally, I'm sure, but they offloaded all the stuff he did wrong, all the misbehaviours he did, all of the kids he hit, were not listening, all of the bad stuff. We got books and books and books of all the stuff he did wrong. You know, they kept communication books. So guess what happened as soon as he got in the car? I went all my upside down parenting, and keeping in mind I'm a teacher and I'm a reasonably intelligent person, I still focused on all the stuff he did wrong because that's what was in my head. That's what I'd just been told. If I knew what I now know, I would have just focused on, you know, and I would have even said to the carers, tell me something he did well today so I can grow that. Oh, he played nicely with Johnny in the sandpit. So then in the car, instead of focusing on the 9 out of the 10 things he did wrong, he played nicely with Johnny in the sandpit. Oh, that's so lovely that you played nicely with Johnny in the sandpit. You know what? That really shows me you're such a good friend. You're so kind. You know, you're playing nicely with your friend. You're a really good friend. I could have focused on the 9 out of the 10 things that they said. He hit the such and so, he did such and so, he did that. But by focusing on the thing he did well and having him feel good, because he already feels pretty crappy because he knows 9 out of the 10 things he did today were not good. But by focusing on something he did well, or even just hijacking. Here's a good example for you. There was a little kid who my mentor, Howard Glasser, who's the founder of the Nurtured Heart approach, was coaching this dad. And this little boy, 5 years old, he was very challenging. And the parents said to Howard Glasser, he never does anything right. I don't have anything to acknowledge him for. So he felt like he couldn't do anything in the stand too. There wasn't anything to acknowledge him for. He never behaved. He didn't give us the opportunity to tell him he was a good kid. So Howard Glasser taught him about hijacking. And this is a really good tip for those parents whose kids don't give them as many opportunities to acknowledge. So he taught him about hijacking. So hijacking is where you look for a situation where you can kind of hijack the situation to show the kid that they're doing well. So this dad was taking the son to school, and every day, you know, that the kid, you know, didn't listen, didn't do what he was asked, but but he had to close the door to get in the car. So the dad thought really quickly, I'm going to help my kid to be successful. So he knew the kid had to close the door to get into the car. So before he did, he said, Johnny, I need you to close the door on the car, please. And the door closes. Thank you. And so he hijacked him to be successful. Thank you so much for listening when I asked you to close the door. That really shows me that you're listening, that you're being cooperative, and that you're ready to have a great day, and let's get to school on time. One win. Next thing, seatbelt. Johnny, I need you to, so he's already had a success. Johnny, I need you to put your seatbelt on. Click, in goes the seatbelt. Thank you so much, Johnny, for listening when I asked you to put your seatbelt on. That means you really care about your safety. You're ready to have just reinforcing. So this kid's already had 2 wins and he's just got in the car. So he's already probably set to have a better day on that day than he would have on prior days when mum and dad were probably saying, now remember not to do this and don't misbehave and all this sort of stuff. And guess what happened with this? This is a real life story. This kid, within about 2 months, who never listened, who never got it right, who never was cooperative or compliant, was an amazing kid who listened and followed the rules and got things done because his cup of his sense of self was being filled. So this is how vital this work is. When we can start telling kids that we see their greatness, that we see their qualities, that we, even if this kid might normally be mucking up, but you can find something to acknowledge them for, even the smallest thing, and build on that, then that kid's like, yeah, you know, and then that helps to have a more positive kind of roller coaster journey instead of the negative one where they're always getting into trouble. And the more they start to feel good about themselves, the more the parent starts to feel good about the situation, the more confident the parent is looking for ways to acknowledge the kid, the better the kid feels, and it ends up being a much more positive roller, whatever that term is again, like it ends up being really positive. Yeah. Snowball, the snowball effect. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. And they're going to find more reasons. They're going to be like, well, they patted my back on patted for that. I'm getting good feelings, good feelings. What if I do this? Look at this. Hey, Dad, I dug a hole. Well done.
Yeah.
There you go, from the Castle, Australian movie. Dad always celebrates the wins. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's not about like making our kids, like that. It's not that they have to do the right thing to get recognition from us, but we want to have them feel good about themselves. And particularly a lot of these kids who are these really intense kids, we want them to see that as parents, we all think that we're using positive language with our kids, and it's not just about positive versus negative. It's about really looking for the opportunities to build the greatness. So if you're a parent and you're listening, or anybody who works with kids, if I were to ask you, and I'm about to get on a coaching call with a family, and this is what I'm going to ask them, what would be some of the top qualities you would love to see your now child, adolescent, teenager, young adult exhibit in the future when they're out in the world working, having a business, making relationships, having a relationship, getting married? What are the things that you would love, the qualities that you would love to see them being strong in? And usually parents don't vary that much. We want them to have integrity. We want them to, to be kind and thoughtful, good people. We want them to be able to, make good decisions, to be able to be resilient, to be able to be a contributing, person in the society, to be able to feel good about who they are as a person and what they do. So all of these things that we want, that we foresee and we want our children to be good at or to have in their arsenal, in their, what we call their portfolio, their inner wealth. These are the things that we have to concentrate on working on. So if integrity is really important and telling the truth, for example, they're the things you've got to focus on. So instead of focusing on them telling a lie or not telling the truth or not showing integrity, you've got to look for the opportunities where even if 9 times out of 10, they might tell porcupines, but then they tell the truth on something or they come clean. That's when you have to say, I love how you just really were vulnerable enough to tell me the truth then. I know it might have been scary for you telling me the truth, but you did. And you know what that shows me? That you really have a lot of integrity, and that, that the truth is important to you. And I really value that and I really appreciate it. So then the kid's going to be, oh, good. When I tell the truth, mum or dad or whoever really acknowledges that and sees that as a quality. And the more you can do that, and sometimes I'll say to parents, just pick 1 or 2 things at a time that are really important to you. It might be following instructions. It might be being cooperative. It might be getting ready for school on time. It might be, playing nicely with their sibling, being kind to their sibling. Whatever that thing is, you've got to look for all those opportunities to acknowledge that the child is doing that or moving towards doing that. Because sometimes you've got to do that hijacking that we talked about. And sometimes you've got to look for the smallest, what we call the baby steps towards that behavior. And then the more we tell them, I love how you're being, respectful in this moment. Wow, that really showed a lot of respect. Gee, that was respectful when you spoke to your dad like that. Wow, you were really respectful to your friend then when you stop and listen to whatever the situation is. The more the kid's going to see themselves as being respectful, as opposed to the opposite when we're continually telling them they're not listening, they're not being respectful, they're not being. So it's about what are we putting energy into as the adult into our conversations? Are we building the things that we want to grow? Or back to the watering can, are we watering the weeds? And that's the big distinction. Water what you want to grow. Water what you want to grow. Water what you want to grow. If something is happening that you don't want to water it, don't give it as much attention, connection, and relationship. Look for the opportunity to water the things you want to grow. It's not
imagine,
always easy. It's not always easy for parents to do. It takes a real mind shift, but it's doable.
yeah, I imagine, I imagine that while you're watering the things that you want to grow, you're also going to be watering their self-talk with that as well. So
Oh,
because there's,
absolutely.
that's it's like, oh, I am a good person. I am
Absolutely.
reliable. Because I've got proof. Mum's
You just hit the nail on
proof.
the head. We have to give them irrefutable proof.
Yeah,
Okay, you just said the word reliable. If we want them to feel reliable, we've got to keep telling them we see them being reliable. You are reliable. Look how reliable you're being. Even just the smallest little tiny things that show them that they're being reliable. And we've got to build on that, build on that, build on that, build on that till they're like, yeah, I'm reliable. And stand 3, which I'll go into, well, yeah, anyway.
hmm. Cool. I love this stuff.
It's
Right.
it take you do need a lot of downloads on it because it is a whole new way of using words that we already know in our vocabulary, but we're just using them in a different way.
Yeah.
And from working with so many parents, when they first hear it, they go, oh, this makes sense, but it's not always easy. And that's why when I'm coaching parents and when I do my courses, I have a lifetime membership because I want parents to be able to connect into the community, to be a part of, the education and the ongoing calls, because they might be going all right for 6 months and then they might hit a bit of a brick wall. So they need to come back in again, or, they need some more energy from the group. They need to rehone their skills. I've fallen down a bit into the bad land of negativity, we call it again, which
Yeah.
can happen, right? We're humans. We're not perfect.
And that's okay to not be perfect, especially as a parent. I mean, you're going to have emotions. You've
Absolutely.
got to make that happen. Yeah.
Perfection is not required. It is definitely not required. And we want to show our kids too that, we do make mistakes. We are humans, but here's what we can do is we can reset, which will lead me into stand 3, the perfect segue. So stand 3 is
Yep.
absolutely clear. So Jace, that's about having clarity, because so many parents go, yeah, but what about the rules? What about the consequences? What about the punishments? What about when they muck up? So our stand 3 in Nurtured Heart approach is quite different to conventional ways of consequences and or punishment. We want the child to be able to acknowledge, yes, I've made a mistake, I mucked up, I broke a rule, I was disrespectful, but we want them to be able to reset back to their greatness. Now, most kids would either be familiar with video games or know how video games work. I myself am not a video game player. Have you ever played a video game? Yes. Okay. I can see you're a video game player.
Way too many.
So tell me what happens when you muck up in a video game. When you
Reset.
break a rule, what happens?
Oh, yeah. You reset. You start again. You start again. You go and you try again. And you try and
Exactly.
nail it again. Yeah.
And you might learn from that mistake. Oh, I shouldn't have done that such and so in the game. So the game does not nag you, does not send you to your room for timeout because you mucked up. It allows you to reset. So you take a few seconds and you can, whatever happens to the game, you reset the game and you're back in the game again. This is what we want to do with our parenting. So when the kid mucks up, we want to help teach them to self-regulate. So when they muck up, make a mistake, break a rule, they're rude, they're disrespectful or what have you, reset. It could take a second or two. It might take a minute or two, but to reset and get back in the game again. So we're not there to punish them. We're not there to send them to their room. Timeouts and punishments do not work. The only time they're perceived to work is through fear and intimidation, but they don't work. We want to teach the kids to self-regulate so they know what the rules are. They know what is expected of them at home and or at school. When they muck up, they get kicked out of the game, the video game. They can reset and get back in the game again. And then we're going to be there to celebrate them for their reset and getting back in the game again and getting back into the space of being cooperative or listening or whatever was happening in that moment. Because punishing them for doing that, and there are going to be some, like parents go, what if they do something, big or there are going to be circumstances where we need to talk about consequences, but the general kind of little incidental things that are happening throughout the day that might frustrate us as parents, if we can teach the kids to self-regulate, then they're going to be able to reset. And the best way to teach them is for us, parents and educators and caregivers of children, to model the reset. So let's just say the kids are mucking up in the background, they're scrubbling, they're, not whatever's happening, that's not the way you want it to be. So you might say to the kids, I just need a moment because I need to reset. I'm feeling a bit escalated. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling angry. Whatever your feeling is, we want the kids and the adults to be able to acknowledge their feelings. I need to reset. So we're going to model to the kids that instead of reacting in that moment, we're going to take those few seconds, take a few deep breaths, whatever you need to do, take the deep breaths, move out of the room for a moment, whatever you need to do, punch a punching bag, squeeze a squeezy ball, whatever you need to do to de-escalate yourself, to self-regulate, to get yourself back into a space of, okay, now I've reset. Now I can get back into the game again, the video game. I've reset the game. Now I can get back into the game with a bit more clarity. Now I can get back into the game looking for things going right or looking for a solution to the challenge that's happening, instead of going into that default mode, which we all do as parents, yelling, screaming, go to your room, you're punished, you're grounded, all the stuff that we tend to do so naturally. We're giving our bodies the opportunity ourselves to self-regulate and to reset so that we can handle the situation with more clarity and with more positivity, looking for the things that we want to grow instead of focusing on the things we don't. Now, stand 3 can be challenging for some people because, they're really, they were brought up, or their idea of parenting is that we must punish, there must be consequences. But when you teach kids to naturally reset and self-regulate, it's beautiful, because kids identify they mucked up, and kids will even tell the parents, hey, mum, I think you need to reset, because mum might be escalated. Dad might be escalated. So the idea of the reset gives us the opportunity. And I have a little acronym that I use, the BOP, BOP. So it's just breathe. So the first part of it is just to breathe. Then the really important part, the O, is to open your heart. So while you're just breathing out the frustration, but whilst you're opening your heart is, okay, how do I want to feel? Do I want to feel angry? Do I want to be yelling? Do I want to be screaming at the kids? Do I want to send them to their rooms? Usually not. That's not how we want to feel. How do we want the kids to feel? Do we want them to be angry, or do we want them to be calm? Do we want them to calm themselves down? Do we want to calm ourselves down? So open your heart into feeling how you want to feel. And the P is just to pause. So just take those few seconds to pause and feel into what it is you want to grow, what it is and how you want to be feeling, rather than focusing on the frustrations that are happening in the moment, which is what we tend to do as parents, especially when things are going not the way we want them to. So it's kind of like the whole 3 stands, Jace, are like a dance. I call it the nurtured heart dance.
Yeah.
Because at any given moment, you're going to be dancing the steps. It might be, okay, I'm in stand 2. I'm acknowledging and recognizing things going well. Or it might be, I need to be in stand 3. I need to reset myself because I'm feeling escalated. Or it might be stand 1. Okay, I'm not giving energy to what's going on there. I'm not giving that attention. I'm looking for something to acknowledge and the greatness. So that dance is something that you basically, my hope is that you'll be forever doing the nurtured heart dance, because you're going to be in one of those stands ongoing. You're going to be either in stand 1 or stand 2 or stand 3, and not necessarily in that order, in any order, but it's a dance that you're going to do. So you're going to know this dance so well that in 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, you're going to be able to naturally weave in and out of the 3 stands of the nurtured heart approach so naturally. And I see my parents and I see the people who do my courses do this so beautifully. Parents who were prior yellers and naggers and punishers, who are now doing the nurtured heart dance. The kids are flourishing. The parents are happier. The kids are feeling happier and healthier. Their communication's happier and healthier. Everybody's happier, and everybody's feeling better than they were when they were doing it the old way.
Can I ask, so in the moment, something's going on and you need to address it, but you don't want to be noticing the whatever the behavior you don't want to be happening. So you can't focus on that.
You can still address it. So some people get a bit confused. So it's not ignoring, it's just not giving it a lot of energy. So where in the past, if the kids were fighting, you might say, hey, kids, stop that fighting, rah, 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 rah. You might just say, kids, I need you to calm down, please, or I need you to speak nicely. You can give them something just short and sharp, or if somebody's being hurt or somebody's damaging something, of course you've got to remove the child that's being hurt or the child who's doing it. There are instances where you've got to do something. You can't, we're not ignoring, we're just not energizing. It's like we're not putting fuel on the fire. We want to put the fire out, but we don't want to put more fuel on it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that's the steps of the dance can be quite intricate in those moments where you're not giving attention to that, but you're looking for an opportunity to show either the kid who's mucked up or the kid who's been hurt or called names or what have you, to actually give some recognition where it's due. Kids will learn. Kids are such fast learners when it comes to this, and they really soon realize it feels better. Because if you sat any kid down and said, would you rather in our house that you get punished, that mum and dad scream and yell and send you to your room and you get privileges taken away and you can't do things that you want to do, or would you rather have a happy and healthy and cooperative home? Most kids would rather that. So, if the kids are old enough, you can actually have that discussion with them and not make it about them and their misbehavior, but make it about me, the adult in this house, the parent, the caregiver, the teacher. I need to work on myself so that I can communicate in relationship better. And here's what I'm doing. I'm learning all this new stuff. It's going to feel weird. The language is going to be weird because I don't normally talk this way. I'm going to be doing stuff that I don't normally do, but I want to improve me because I don't feel good about how I'm communicating and relationshiping in this home. I don't feel good about yelling and screaming all the time. I don't feel good about sending to your room. I don't feel good about this. I want to improve me. So instead of the kid feeling like you're trying to fix them, they're actually seeing you work on yourself. And a natural consequence of that is going to be things are going to be better for them as well. And they'll learn quickly, if they learn this dance as well, that the house is going to be a happier, more, cooperative and loving place to be in. And that's what everybody wants ultimately.
And I suppose it's got to be a bit cyclical as well. So they're realizing that you're showering this love and attention on them for da 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 da, and they're probably like, "Well, hang on, that feels nice. I want mum to feel nice. I'm going to show her some attention to her." And it's like, "Oh, whoa, thank you." Yeah. So that thing goes backwards and forwards, and then they get to see how that feels to make mum feel good.
Oh yeah, kids, when the kids get it, they are so good at it. And they'll even start practicing it on their friends or their friends' parents or their teachers, because they're like, I want to feel this way. If they're getting the nurtured heart at home but not at school, and at school there's contrast, like they don't like the feel of what's happening at school, they're going to want that feeling at school too, or vice versa if they're getting at school and not at home. Kids will tell the adults, and they will actually acknowledge the parents as well. I've got story after story after story of kids really giving it back to their parents in a positive way, acknowledging their parents, even for the efforts their parents make. Even if their parents are mucking up, I see you were trying, mum. I see you were, like, kids are so good at this.
It's got to be a sobering moment there, hasn't it? You're like, I can see you trying, mum. You're like,
yeah.
You're right. I am trying.
Exactly. The kids are good at it. So it's a real thing that we model, and we model. So we can either model the system that we don't want to put in place, or the one that we do. And it's a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. I tell people when I'm talking to them face to face, like if I zone out and I look like I'm looking off into the distance, I'm filing things in my filing system. So I'm aware that I'm probably going to repeat this on these podcasts a fair bit. He's like, okay, he's filing stuff away, and I am.
That's all good.
As we go, as we're talking, I'm thinking about different clients and different ways that I can probably implement this with
Mm.
with the different guys.
Huge. You can make a huge, and it could be not only to the kids, but it could be if you're working with the parents as well. You can say it to the parents. You know what the biggest compliment to a parent is? Complimenting their kid. You know, telling, hey, you know what, Johnny was so kind and thoughtful today. Susie fell over and hurt herself, and Johnny was a really good friend. You know, he helped her, you know, get up and asked her if she was okay. And that really shows he's a really great friend, you know, and parents love to hear that their kids have done well, that they've done something nice, or, you know, that if particularly if they're a kid who tends to normally muck up and they normally get the report of the misdemeanor that happened, but they get something good instead. We have, there are so many things I could share with you, like greatness notes and things that, you know, you could give a kid. Today you showed the greatness of being resilient, or today you showed the greatness of being a kind friend. Write it on a little stick-it note or a little cardboard, cut out some heart shapes or something. I don't know, you're a blokey bloke, you might not want to do hearts, but I love hearts. You know, give the kids something to give to their parent that shows their parent, you know, today Susie showed the greatness of resilience. You know, she tried really, really hard at whatever you were doing, and give them that to take to their parent. That, and what's that going to do for the kid? The kid's going to be like, look what I got, mum and dad. And the parent's going to be like, wow, that's amazing. So it's going to be, so you're going to feel,
It's
you're
all
going to get
reinforcing itself.
it's, yeah. So a little note that could take you 5 to 10 seconds to write out, to give to that kid, to say, here's your greatness note. I want you to take this home to mum or dad to tell, so that they can see how great you've been today. If you're not seeing the parents in person, that's a great way of doing it. If you are seeing the parents in person, verbally is always a lot more powerful, but a little note is awesome as well.
That's actually, yeah, I'm going to apply that. So I've got a little thing that I do. One of the boys actually came up with it, and I've extended on the idea. And now I'm going to further extend on the idea from this. We call it so they've got our captaincy program. So the guys that have been in there for longer get to take the new guys under their shoulder as a bit of a responsibility thing. So it's like, okay, oh look, you got a captain point because you helped little Johnny, and I didn't have to ask you to do it. You just did it. And they're like, oh, that's good. So I get to see them feeling good about it. I never actually thought about making sure that the parents are aware of that, because that's a double win. The parents get to feel good and know the positive things that are happening, but little Johnny gets to feel good because they're seeing mum's and dad's eyes.
Oh, yeah, it's powerful. It's a snowball effect. And a little tip for you, when you're complimenting or acknowledging or recognizing, the best thing you can say is give the recognition. And then what that shows me is, because if you're just saying, good job, well done, that was great, that's good. We call that junk food praise. But if you really want to, you know, what that shows me is that you're so responsible, that you're showing great signs of leadership, you know, for the older kids. Like, you use appropriate words for, you know, you would use different words for a 16-year-old than you would for a 6-year-old. That really shows me that you are, you know, you are showing great indications of leadership, of you know, and all those sort of things. And so it's whatever they did well, and what that shows me is, and that, you know, you're then telling them the quality that you see in them. So not that they just did something good, or you know, whatever, but what that shows about you as a person.
Yeah.
That's where the power is.
Yeah, cool.
Mm.
Thank you for the warm fuzzy there. I'm like, oh, that's sort of what I do. Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
And I'm
absolutely.
going to knock my camera over again. Oh, I got to stop
It feels, look, it feels good. We all love to be acknowledged and recognized.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, like, we, as adults, we don't get it enough. You know, like, I love to, even just going into a shop, you know, when somebody takes a little bit of care to fold up the clothes that I've just purchased, I'll say, look, thank you so much. I see you just took a lot of care in folding the clothes. And that really shows me that, you know, you care about your customers and that my clothes are not going to be creased when I get home. And that really, shows me how dedicated you are. And I really appreciate that. And they're like, whoa, nobody's ever thanked me for that before,
Everybody
or
complained,
it
but
could be, if you get good service, instead of just, oh, thanks, that was great. What did that show about you? What did that show about the person? And I can tell you what, they'll be talking about that to everybody, because we don't give it out enough. We don't give that acknowledgement and recognition out enough, but the kids crave it. And many adults do a lot of silly things to get that connection and relationship as well, because they crave it as well, so it's not just kids.
if you look on a reviews site, everybody's got negative reviews and there's very little few very, very positive ones. And it's the same thing with the kids. It's that's what we deliver. That's what we focus on. Yeah.
So you're imagining they've got a portfolio, like a physical portfolio. So what are we putting into that portfolio? We want that portfolio to be filling up. And then when they go out into the big world on their own, what do we want that portfolio to be full of? Do we want it to be full of, I'm not good enough, I never get it right, all the negative stuff? Or do we want it to be full of all the things that we want, that we've seen in them, that that we've acknowledged them for over the years? We want them to go out into the world knowing that they have that greatness, that they have those qualities, that they will attract positive things in their lives, that they do deserve success, that they do deserve to have a great relationship and partner, that they deserve to enjoy the work they do, that they deserve to, have people be kind to them, and, all of these things. And we want these young people to feel that they are a good person, not that they're crap, not that they're not good enough, not that they don't, that they, that nobody cares. Because so many young people now, they lock themselves in their bedrooms and play video games all day, and they don't, they just, because their home is not a place that makes them feel valued. And I know they feel loved because their parents love them, but anyway, I could go on and on about this.
Yes, that's the whole podcast on its own. Could you share any like long-term success stories or specific examples of how this approach has benefited the families you work with?
Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to think, there are hundreds, but I'll just think of one male. So last year I did, no, actually it was the second half of 22. I did a 6-month course, which I've now changed to be ongoing. But I had this couple, so I knew the female, like more of an acquaintance, not a close friend, but we knew each other. And she started the course on her own, and then she dragged hubby in. Now, hubby's a gorgeous man, like a big bikey looking guy with a big beard, a real Aussie sort of guy. And he was kind of like, really standoffish initially. I could see on the camera he was like, like this, like pretty standoffish. Once, after the first week, he changed. After the second week, he changed. And then he became the hugest advocate for this. And he actually said, you know what, I thought this was some tree hugging rubbish, like when his partner first asked him to participate. Because I always say to the parents, if you have a parenting partner, it's vital that they be involved, because you need to be parenting back to back. It doesn't always work, but if they can, that's awesome. Now, this man, at the end of the 6-month course, said, Lillian, I want to thank you. Not only am I a better father, I'm a better husband, I'm a better person, I feel better about myself, and the kids don't feel like they have to step on eggshells with me now. We have great relationships, and I'm a different person. I'm just a different person. And that was, a big kind of, tough kind of, guy who thought it was some stupid tree hugging thing. Like, there are so many examples. I've had examples of adults who have mended their relationship with their own parents, who have mended relationships with siblings and people other than their kids. But when you see the families whose kids acknowledge their parents for the efforts they've made, like our son did for us, then they're the beautiful kind of things that happen, because the parents, like, they just say thank you, like they're just so grateful for the knowledge. But we feel better in ourselves when we can acknowledge and see the greatness in people. It actually, like, I feel better acknowledging somebody I feel than the person who I've acknowledged, because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wins everywhere.
Win-wins for sure. Yeah.
Sorry, filing. Is I, I go my brain. I'm thinking like, okay, this guy, that, yeah, that's yeah, wow.
Look, and I appreciate we've only been chatting for a short while, and that's why I now take, because I used to do a 1-day course, a 2-day course, then a 1 week, then a 6 week, then a 12 week. It ended up being a 24 week, and now it's just on an ongoing course, because I want people to be able to really learn this stuff.
Okay.
So that it's in them, like it's just the way they communicate in relationship now. I've got so many of my parents, they send me examples of things that are happening. I'm so proud of them, and they're proud of themselves too, because prior it wouldn't have. And I've got one mum in my group who has a child diagnosed with autism, and is quite an intense young girl, 10 years old, and the distance that mum and that daughter have come, plus the sister who used to cop a lot because of the sister being so challenging. And it's not perfect. She says it's not perfect, but boy, they are having results in leaps and bounds, because the mother was prepared to do the work. And here's an interesting thing. What I teach is not going to be for everybody. You have to be prepared to do the work, and you have to be prepared to make the changes and to work on yourself, because if we want those better relationships and connections with our kids, we have to work on ourselves first.
Yeah.
We have to be the change for the change to happen.
Okay. So with that, just for the listeners at home, we are going to have to cut this in half. So we'll come back with a part 2. Now, in that part 2, we're going to be able to speak a bit more specifically about people with disability and assisting with that.
Look, in total transparency, this works for everybody. It works for everybody, regardless of your status or regardless of where you're at. But what I find is the more intense the person is, the child particularly is, the better this actually works, because they really, I guess, like my son, they have had their fair share of negativity in the general world. So
Yeah.
they really soak this up, and they really respond so beautifully to it. So whether there's a disability factor or not, this works for everybody. But yeah, those really heart-driven kids who really seek that relationship, they seem to soak it up even more than the other people.
Okay, cool, good. That's what I'm hoping for. I tried with a lot of people with autism and other neurodivergent. So that might be something I can share with them. So thank you for sharing your story and insights with us today, Lillian. Now I will put the writing in there on how to contact you, but where can our listeners find more out about you and your work?
Awesome. I'm all over the place. Lillian Reekie, parenting strategist on Facebook is probably my main platform. You can see my website there, parentsupportnetwork.com.au. Yeah, probably email. Email is lillian@parentsupportnetwork.com.au. Facebook, if you're on Facebook, I'm always on Facebook, so that's a good place to catch me. But my website, you can also contact me through my website. So yeah, lots of places. But I'm the Parent Support Network. If you Google that or Google my name, I'm pretty easy to find.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will provide some links, and I look forward to having a chat with you next week.